Burlesque Stripped Down, episode number 25. Welcome back, ladies, gentlemen, and everyone in between. This is Velvet Eau Claire, your guide through all of the secrets, saucy, sexy, and not so sexy from the ladies and gents behind the tassels. As always, thank you so much for pressing play today. Welcome back to those of you who have been longtime listeners through all 25 episodes. Very exciting. And welcome to any new listeners that we do have today. I'm so excited to have you here, especially for such a great episode. We get into some really good stuff. If you had a chance to listen last week, you heard our episode. It was kind of a mind-blowing episode for me to talk to someone. I was, trying to hold the fangirl inside of me, kind of keep her down a little bit because I was going a little crazy. Miss Suki Singapura was just amazing to talk to. It's so inspiring and exciting to chat with someone who has had, not just such success performing, but such an impact in her country and the world and all of that. So it's always just makes my day a little more inspiring, and I hope that it did the same for you. If you haven't had a chance to listen, definitely go back over and check out episode number 23, which is with Suki Singapura. Today, I don't have very many announcements. I want to get right into it because I have an interview with the beautiful and the talented and the just funny as hell Legs Malone. And she is just phenomenal. I first heard about Legs. I was looking for other burlesque podcasts and entertainment podcasts, and she does have an amazing one called Lunch with Legs. So I've been listening to that for a while. So I was really excited when she said she wanted to come on the show and chat with me on my own show. So let me tell you a little bit about Legs herself. She is the girl with a 34.5-inch inseam. She's a burlesque performer, producer, and teacher based out of Brooklyn, New York. She got her start through London's Whoopee Club in 2006, and she can be found regularly on stages in her native New York City, across the USA, and throughout the world. She's currently the producer of the Wolfshine Burlesque in Brooklyn, New York, and, as I mentioned, host of the Lunch with Legs podcast. Offstage, Legs is a rebirthing breathworker, Wu Tao dance teacher, body worker, and Reiki practitioner. She teaches self-transformation classes tailored for both burlesque dancers and non-dancers alike. She studied shamanism, astrology, tarot, feng shui, and geomancy, and continues to learn and study extensively. It's her goal to help women, men, and gender-fluid people alike to realize how unique, special, and beautiful they are. And as you listen to our interview, you will definitely hear just that passion that Legs has for life, for people, for creating this energy in the world. I can just feel it already, and I am so excited. I was so happy to get to talk to her. I'm excited to share it with you, and I'm super excited to be able to meet her at some point in the future. Someday we'll cross paths in face-to-face terms. Without further ado, I'm going to just go ahead and jump right in. Why waste any more time, right? This is my interview with Miss Legs Malone. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. I have the girl with the 34.5-inch inseam. I have Miss Legs Malone.
Hello.
Hello, how are you doing?
I'm very well, thanks. How are you?
Good. I always want to say your name with like a 20s like gangsta accent. Got Legs Malone here today, guys.
One of the early inspirations of my name. And I was like, I'm going to do all gangster numbers. And 10 years later, I have yet to do a gangster number.
That's all right. It just gives off that kind of aura with it.
Legs Malone, see?
Legs Malone here today. So you're coming to us from New York City, is that right?
I am. Gorgeous, cloudy Brooklyn, New York.
Lovely, lovely. Is it pretty not great today?
No, it's actually, I am not one to mind cloudy or rainy weather. I actually quite like it. And today it's very overcast. I know we're recording prior to the time that this is being released, but we up here in the north have had a very strange spring so far, and we went from about 60, 70 degrees to 20 degrees. And so now we're climbing back up. I think today is like 40, maybe 50 degrees. So yeah, it's strange weather. But yeah, so it's very perfect picture taking weather, but I don't know about strolling in the park.
Yeah, it's not always the best for that. I'm down in Florida at the moment, so but even Florida hasn't been able to keep up. Yeah, I know. In the summer, I'll be complaining more.
Yeah, totally.
True. But even here, it hasn't really been able to make up its mind. It's like, well, it'll be fairly chilly, and then it'll be just balls hot, like so horrible. But I don't know what the weather's doing this year. But it's better than, I used to, you said you don't mind the rain. For me, I don't mind it and the dreariness. But like I lived in Ireland for a little while, and it was I just found like when you get like days and days and days and weeks of that in a row, it just so brings down that energy a little bit.
Yeah, I lived in England for 2.5
Oh, so you,
and that's actually where I started doing burlesque, and I never really minded it. I mean, I think the only annoying thing was like, I have another wet umbrella to deal with, but it was just like, oh great, I get to drink like a gorgeous cup of tea and stare out the window or go get drunk with my friends. Like it was pretty awesome.
And we wonder why their culture has developed as it has. I love you, British friends.
Yeah, they're people.
They are. They're wonderful. I keep wanting to. I haven't been able to actually live in the UK yet. I really, really want to, but financially and opportunity-wise, it just hasn't happened.
Yeah, it's expensive. It's expensive,
and visas are a pain in the butt, and it's just c'est la vie. It's life. So let's go ahead and jump right in. I'd love to hear, what do you have going on right now? We're recording this kind of mid-April in 2016. What do you have going on that you are most excited about?
That is an amazing question, because we are recording on the day of a very powerful new moon. We were just talking prior to recording about astrology right now, and I am super into astrology, and new moons are all about new beginnings, and I am in a major period of new beginnings right now. I made a resolution at the beginning of this year. This is my 10th year doing burlesque. It will be
woohoo! Happy anniversary!
It will be exactly 10 years in September. And I love performing, I love producing, and I love teaching most of all. And so I have really been focusing on generating more class content. Because I really want to focus on teaching, and I am developing a whole new class that I have great plans for, and it's called Showgirl Zen. I'm in the midst of getting the copyright, so I'm super excited, or the trademark rather.
That's amazing.
Yeah, just it's all about finding inner peace both on stage and off, because it's two things, both being a showgirl and also just getting into the flow of life in a peaceful and supportive way. That feels good in both like body and mind. Those are things that I'm really passionate about. So that's what, those are some of the big things that I'm working on right now, both developing class content and, I really want to travel and teach, and perform.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been 2016 has been so far a very transformative year. Plenty of challenges, but within the challenge, I find rests incredible opportunity.
That's great. And it's interesting that you're talking about, the Showgirl Zen, because for those of you who have listened to the last few episodes, we had an interview with Kalita a couple weeks ago.
Kalita's my girl!
She is! She's so wonderful. I connected with her through
sister.
Yeah, through my girls in Paris. They knew her from San Francisco, and so I connected with her. And she's talking about her Showgirl Awakenings and all of that. And so it's so, I love it. I love that this is coming out, and she and I were talking about this.
Showgirl's shaman, and I'm the burly llama.
I love, oh my God, the burly llama. That's amazing. I love it.
The gal from Portland gave me that name. I cannot take credit for it.
That is perfect. It's perfection.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's so great that, she and I were talking about this, how like these kind of concepts are coming out, even outside of burlesque, just all over these days. And like, kind of coming, this feminine energy, this coming more at peace with yourself, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a huge amount of energy rising on our planet and in our bodies and consciousness. I mean, in one of the classes that I teach, I talk about the law of the sacred mirror, which is we can only see in others what is already present within ourselves. And whenever you want to get a gauge of what's going on the super deep interpersonal level, you have to look out into communities, both local and global and international. I mean, I guess global and international is the same thing, but you look at what's going on outside of us. I mean, there is so much fighting for identity and justice and, sort of revolution, for lack of a better term, in all ways. I mean, from all different sides, all different walks of life. And I feel especially, feminine energy is very soft, it's very nurturing, and it's very, passive, whereas masculine energy is a lot more aggressive and dynamic. And I feel it's the mixing of those two, because, the whole, patriarchy is falling. I mean, I'm really happy about that. And the thing is, the matriarchy fell prior to the patriarchy, and now people are like, yeah, let the matriarchy rise again. But the fact of the matter is, I actually believe it's a matter of masculine and feminine energies coming into a brand new expression and a brand new agreement in order to create literally a brand new world, because there's a lot that is not working anymore, both like on the macrocosm and microcosmic levels. And so I think, it's an extraordinary gift and opportunity to simply be alive right now, much less be in a female body, much less being a burlesque dancer. So I always like to say that burlesque is God's work, because it is. And I am happy to talk at great length about that. But, I feel like in all of time, there have been different harmonics of the different gendered energies. And when I say different harmonics, there's the low energies, there's the high energies, and then, there's also part of that is the sacred energies. And I feel there is a very long history of sacred feminine energy that encompasses the sensuality, that encompasses sexuality, but in a really holy way. Of course, that can be, construed and expressed in lower ways as well. But you look at like the old snake goddesses in the different temples like thousands of years ago, and the Vestal virgins, and, all of this amazing, like how particularly female energy could hold down a certain expression of the sacred that only they could. And I feel that burlesque dancers and the whole mode of burlesque is the contemporary expression of that urge, of that archetype, of that, soul expression. And we are the ones who have chosen to step into that, likely because we have dealt with this in many past lifetimes. And so coming into it now, and in such a crazy climate, especially for all of our burlesque brothers and sisters who are performing in places where it is not okay to take your top off in public in an artistic fashion.
Yes.
So, I think in a lot of ways we are fighting the good fight through love and through just showing up and showing what we love. I mean, that to me is revolution.
I agree. I think, revolution starts. A lot of people don't see that they're going through revolutions when they are, or that they're contributing to it. We have these images of the huge, the protests and the huge, sometimes violent, sometimes nonviolent revolutions. But you're right. I mean, especially as far as social revolutions, it's a lot of people doing a lot of, quote, small things,
Absolutely.
That add up together.
And you look at what the word revolution is, it literally means turning.
Mm-hmm.
And so, sometimes you can be in the middle of something and it can feel real quiet, real internal, and you have your blinders on, you're focusing on your shit, and then suddenly when you look up, you realize that you are facing a completely different angle, and that literally your mind has turned direction. Your expression has changed its path. And that is a form of revolution, and it's equally as valid. It doesn't have to be, bombs and fire and, violence
Absolutely.
and war. It can happen on deep, gentle, almost silent levels. And it's equally as valid because it all contributes to that sacred dynamic of change.
So do you think it's important that, like, as burlesque performers or even supporters or anything, like, that we're kind of aware of that, our place kind of in that, or that this is happening?
I feel like human beings generally would do well to know what a powerful co-creationist vibe we all have, and potential and ability. I think burlesque, especially with regards to some of the things that set us apart. I mean, I have spoken to a lot of performers over the years, and I can only speak to my experience, but I know like one of the polarities that I am acutely aware of with burlesque performers and sort of staying honest with ourselves to keep the art form as fresh and as non-selfless as possible is to sort of look at how do we feel about being seen? And, that's a very human thing. Like, how does it feel to be seen as who you are in, your everyday life with your birth name? How does it feel to be seen as this persona you've created, with full makeup, with glitter, with sequins, with corsets, costumes, blah, 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 blah. How does it feel to be seen completely naked with no makeup on, standing in front of the mirror regarding yourself? It has a lot to do with allowing ourselves to be seen, period. And there are lots of different layers on that. How does it feel to be seen by the male gaze? How does it feel to be seen by the female gaze? How does it feel to be seen with, love? How does it feel to be seen with, restricted perspective, which can, include hateful energy? We, in a lot of ways, I feel we are on the front lines of perception, because I also have witnessed at burlesque shows people coming up to me, coming up to my colleagues, coming up to anybody who has performed in the show with tears in their eyes, primarily women, but it's happened with men too, just saying, oh my God, what did I just see? Yes. You know, I'm different now, and I don't know why. And I feel in a lot of ways, and again, this goes back to me feeling that burlesque is God's work, because if we allow ourselves to be truly present, then that means putting our phones the fuck down, and actually watching what happens. And if we allow ourselves to witness as an audience member the performer on stage, and if the performer is able to get out of their own way and to express their art in as full and as joyful a manner, there is an unbelievable anchoring in the present moment that I feel is the goal of all religions. It's all about being here and now, and witnessing live performance. There is a magic unlike any other, and I think that's why. It is because it is a visceral, loving, incredible anchoring and experience of the present moment. And when we see, and I've said this before, and I will say it for many years to come, I feel that the true sacred hidden art of burlesque is the triumph of the spirit. Because it doesn't matter what your body looks like. It doesn't matter that you have cellulite. It doesn't matter that you gave birth a few years ago and you still have baby weight. It doesn't matter if you are skinny as a rail. It does not matter what you look like, the color of your skin, the texture, the age, the shape, none of that. And if we can allow ourselves to step apart from that and express what is in the core of our heart, that is an unbelievably sacred, profound experience that I hope everybody on this planet has the pleasure and the blessing of seeing.
Wow. Yeah, there's a lot to that. Everything that you just kind of went into. And I think, I mean, I can only speak for my experience, but I think it's no coincidence that, like, for me, for example, I came into burlesque around the same time that I started being more open to things like spirituality and exploring that more and feeling that need for more of that in my life. And I think that it's no coincidence. Chicken or the egg, it doesn't matter which came first, they came together.
Yeah. And I feel like, you know, a process that goes hand in hand with people who really choose to stick with burlesque. Because there are some people who just like want to try it out and they're like, whoopee, that was fun, I'm going back to my life now. And there are other people who stay intrigued and who want to do it. And I feel like, you know, to piggyback on what I was saying earlier about it's about being seen, it's also about allowing ourselves to be vulnerable. Yes. And to both feel that vulnerability, but also to hold space for that vulnerability. Because backstage, I'm pretty sure is like a temple. You know, like that is a very sacred, special place, the backstage area. And which is one of the reasons, I mean, certainly it's one of the things I love about being in New York. The scene is so big, and because of our foremothers and forefathers, we are really good at keeping everybody honest. There's very little tolerance of bullshit. There's very little tolerance of catty behavior. And one of the great things is, and of course it happens because we're human beings, but it's a question of what actions are taken to then curb it, you know? And I feel that, you know, within the vulnerability, because like I have both gone backstage being like, I feel like shit today. I do not like the way I look. I am bloated. I've gained weight. My costume's not fitting, or my costume's broken, like my eyelash is falling off, whatever, my wig, it looks like crap, you know, and being able to hold space for myself as well as for somebody else going through the exact same thing. And, you know, being willing to lend a hand, being like, hey, like, are you okay? And like, sometimes somebody just needs to like, you know, let it all out. And, you know, be it like emotional vulnerabilities, physical vulnerabilities. I mean, I recently injured my back. And that was a first for me. I had never done that before. And having to negotiate performing in heels with 4 bulging discs was crazy, you know? And like having to, and being able to share that backstage, being like, guys, I feel weird in my body right now. And everybody just not even batting an eye and saying, girl, we got you. Do what feels good. You know, we got you. It's, don't worry about it, you know? And so to have that feeling of safety. And again, I can only speak about my experience because I know everybody has very different experiences. And I also know that all of the scenes around the U.S. and around the world are super different. They're they're made up of their individual members. So as long as we can keep the energy and the vibration as high and as loving and as honest and as vulnerable as possible. And by the way, vulnerability is strength. Vulnerability is not weakness at all. there's an affirmation I work with a lot, which is my vulnerability is my strength. Because at the end of the day, when you allow yourself to be vulnerable, you have nothing to hide. All your cards are out. And there is incredible power in that. Because there's no hiding, there's no secrecy. It's just like, boom, here I am. I name it, I claim it. This is who I am. And that's amazing. I mean, if more people could do that, I think that we would live on a very different planet.
I agree fully. I mean, that's been a huge, a big journey for me recently as well. And I'm sure my listeners are tired of hearing me talk about her. But of course, I'm sure you're familiar with Brene Brown.
Just about to name Brene Brown, totally.
She is a goddess in the most, down to earth way.
Absolutely.
Oh, I mean, I'm taking actually her course right now, her online course, and reading her books. And it's just, and we actually talked about this because in December, before my little hiatus on the podcast, we had Authenticity Month, and we talked a little bit about like being vulnerable and coming with your true self and what that really means and how to do that. And so I'm glad that conversation is, continuing into these interviews because I think it's so important, not as performers, but as people.
Oh, absolutely. As human beings, that is an essential conversation to be having if we want to keep our heads above water right now.
Yes. This course that I'm going through, I mean, I firmly believe it should be required, like, in college, not even in colleges, like, let's go middle school, Yeah.
And there's a reason that is coming up now. There's a reason that, Brene, if I can call her by her first name, her work that she has both presented it and it is gaining, that is growing by leaps and bounds, which I am so grateful for. She has been able to put into words things that we need so badly, and especially in America, but I think it also applies to pretty much any country on earth right now that is dealing with histories of shame. Mm-hmm. And that includes colonialism, racial inequality, sexual inequality. I mean, I don't know any country on earth that's not dealing with some level of that. But when we can step into that dialogue of shame and of guilt and freeing ourselves from it, when we change ourselves, we change the world. So I am super duper grateful for her work. And I love that you are bringing energy and awareness to that because especially within the burlesque world. And I think any creative performing arts world or any artist, anybody who is creative, anybody who is the expressors of our society would do well to bring that dialogue into their everyday experience because it will only serve to both fortify and magnify our light and our messages.
There's so many people that need to hear this, and myself included. I mean, this is not entirely an unselfish act that I'm doing here with this podcast because I need to go through this. I have had a very bad relationship with being vulnerable and with feelings of shame throughout my life. I've always been a very creative, artistic person, but I have, not realizing it, but I've stifled that over the years because I've been, I had this relationship. And so it's something that, I think we can all work through kind of together, just like you said, by opening that dialogue, just by talking about it, just by being aware of these kind of things, it helps and it changes and it starts that ball kind of rolling personally and on a more societal level.
Yeah, totally.
It's amazing. And what I said to Kalita as well is just that it's just so amazing that these things are happening. These catalysts are happening in different areas, different unrelated areas. I'm hearing. Yeah, well, that's maybe not as unrelated as we might think. Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
It's like I'm hearing these same messages from different seemingly unrelated areas of my life. And I just find it fascinating. It's just amazing. I'd love to hear a little bit about, coming back to burlesque, like about your journey. I mean, we've heard a little bit about your bio. We've heard a little bit about kind of the general stuff, but tell us a little bit about how you knew, how you came to burlesque and how you really knew that it was right for you.
So this is a story that I've told somewhat frequently, and I look forward to telling it more. It is one of the most... I was introduced to burlesque in an extremely mystical way, and I think it's one of the reasons why I have maintained a very spiritual relationship with burlesque, because it came to me in... I basically want to term it as divine intervention. Back in 2006, actually it was April of 2006, so exactly 10 years ago, I had been living in London. I had just completed my master's degree and was working for a company that I loved and believed in, but it was a very unhealthy work environment. I was not technically allowed to be working because I was on a student visa, but I was a full-time employee. And apart from like work, I mean, my boss, I don't think she ever slept, and she was hyper productive, and I believed in her every step of the way, but I allowed myself to be pushed around a lot. And I mean, in all innocence, like, I don't blame my boss at all. I don't blame myself. It's just where I was in that time. And I, in the process, had completely lost touch with myself, with my own urges, what I want in life. And so I came home. I had to come home back to New York because my student visa was up and I couldn't be seen working for the company, but I was allowed to work for them if I was in the US. So I came home for like 5 or 6 weeks, and I had a very deep knowing that something was seriously off. So I made sure that when I came home, my mom lives in Western Massachusetts, and I had gone to a yoga and retreat center there several years prior to go to massage school. And it has always been a center of deep healing and reconnection for me. So I was immediately like, okay, I want to go see if there's something there, if there's like a weekend workshop when I was visiting my mom for like a week. And there was, and I had enough money to pay for it. And it was not a workshop that I would have taken otherwise. It was with actually an author with Hay House named Sonia Choquette, who's an amazing intuitive. So I said, great, I'm going to go do that. And it was basically about like stepping into your sixth sense, trusting your vibes. That's what it was called. And so I went there, and I just decided to go whole hog. And it was funny. It was like me and like 40 middle-aged women. I mean, I was definitely the youngest person there by far. And she just kept yelling at us like, you guys are so stiff. Like, get up and move. And so I was like, all right, cool. I'm going to do it, because I was really used to just holding myself back and hiding in the shadows. And so I was like, all right, I'm going to fucking do this. And so I did it, and I danced, and I did this, and blah, blah, blah. The last day, we had a guided meditation. And she told us, just pay attention to what your intuition says. And so we just had to hold space, be nice and open, and receive whatever was coming to us. And so she started asking questions, and we just listened to what came up. And she started asking about career. And she started, I can't remember the exact way she said the question, but it was something along the lines of, ask yourself what will bring you the most joy as a career. And I heard a voice. It was as if lips were inside of my ear. I had never experienced anything before like this, and I have never experienced anything like it since. And it simply said burlesque dancer. I opened my eyes and turned to the side because I thought somebody was whispering in my ear. There was nobody there. And every hair on my body stood up. I mean, it was like it's not like I went into shock, but I was like, what the fuck was that? My nervous system completely freaked out. And I didn't know what that was. I did not know what a burlesque dancer was. Dancer, sure, I knew what that was. I've been a dancer my whole life. But I was like, what is burlesque? And so, like, we had to share afterwards, and I told the woman I was talking with, and her eyes got real big. She was like, oh my God. I was like, I don't know what that is. And she was like, well, it sounds crazy. So I was like, cool. And so after that, I went home and I got on Google and I just searched burlesque dancer, and my jaw hit the keyboard when the Google image search came up. And I was like, I'm sorry, universe, you want me to do what? But I was like, all right, let's, if this is what I'm meant to do, let's do it. And I went back down to New York afterwards, and I found the New York School of Burlesque, and my first class was with Joe Boobs, and it was fan dancing. And I previously, historically, suffered from a huge amount of self-hatred, for lack of a better term. I was extremely limited in my self-expression. I refused to recognize my own beauty, my own validity, my own worth. I had an eating disorder for years and did an enormous amount of damage to myself. And fast forward to, burlesque was the beginning of the final stages of healing from that for me. And I will never forget standing in front of the mirror at 440 Studios here in Manhattan with two little handheld feather fans, and just tiny ones. And Joe put us in these particular positions, and I looked at myself in the mirror, and my body made sense to me. It was the first time I had ever seen myself beautifully. I saw myself, and I was just wearing like a shirt and leggings. That was it. But the way my body was standing and the way I was holding the fans, I was just suddenly like, oh my God, my body makes sense. Oh my God, what is this? I want to do it. And so I just dove headfirst into it, went back to London. My entire life fell apart in London throughout the year. I was trying to get a work visa to stay. It was rejected 3 times. I wasn't allowed to be seen working for the organizations. But while that was happening, I was throwing myself into burlesque. And I ended up basically getting my first performance. It was a new moon eclipse, September 6th, 2006. I'll never forget because I read my horoscope that morning. And it said, something that you do today will plant the seed for something that will bloom larger than you've ever imagined. And it was just a class that night. And so I went and took the class with my new, best burlesque friend, who's not performing anymore, but she's still in the scene. And afterwards there was an amateur show. And I guess, most of the cast dropped out because they were shitting themselves with fear, which I completely understand. And my friend Tori and I were just sitting at this table, and the producer was coming around to all the tables. She was like, can you perform? Can you perform? Can you perform? And my friend Tori, in perfect British style, was like, no, absolutely not. No way. No, I came here for a class. That's it. And I was sort of like, no, I guess not. And I just sort of watched the producer walk away, and Tori looked at me and she was like, you want to get up there, don't you? And I was like, yeah, I do. Because I'd been working on an act in my bedroom at night. And she was like, well, what do you need? And I said, well, I guess all I need is pasties and a raincoat. And she opened up her bag and pulled out pasties and a trench coat. And I was like, holy shit, I guess I have to do this. So that's the night that Legs Malone was born, on the Bethnal Green Working Men's Club stage in East London. And I completely fucked up the act. I stopped listening to my music. I had no idea what was happening. It was judged. And one of the judges completely excoriated me, which definitely hurt. But the other 2 judges were amazing and came up to me afterwards. They're like, don't listen to her. You did amazing. That was so courageous, so brave. You have great stage presence. Just keep working at it. You got this. And, fast forward 4 months later, or however long, from September to December, and I had set my return flight home the day after this basically amateur contest was coming to a head, and I won it. And the crazy thing is, and this speaks to the performing arts in Britain, I didn't take off my bra, but I won anyway, because I just did a very funny act. And the next day I flew home to New York and was like, what just happened? And I was so depressed, and I did not want to be here at all. And I'm from here. I was with my family, and my best friends were here. I didn't want to be seen. I cried for 2 months because I didn't want to be back here. And the only thing that kept me going was going to burlesque shows. And at that time, there were burlesque shows 7 nights a week. And that's all I did. I was living at home, so I didn't have to worry about rent. I got odd jobs here and there just to, pay for myself. But I just literally 7 nights a week, all I did was go to burlesque shows. And that was the beginning.
That's amazing. I love hearing the journey, and it's amazing to hear. I mean, a couple times I got chills, that you had such a strong pull towards something, or maybe it was a push, maybe. I don't know. Who knows how it worked.
Pull me, push you, whatever happened, it happened.
Whatever. Yeah, and that's really cool that you were able to really listen to that voice, to that, whether you call it your intuition, your, whatever, that voice inside of you, or an external thing, whatever it was, that you were able to really listen to it. Because so many of us, so many people would have heard, burlesque dancer and been like, fuck that.
Yeah, I'm not into judgment. I mean, for me, I was at the end of my rope. I knew that I was not in a good place, and I was desperate for something to pull me out of what I was doing, or at least to throw me a rope so I could pull myself out of it. And I realized one of the things that burlesque afforded me, I mean, it gave me many, many, many things, but one of them was joyful creative expression. And I am a deeply creative person, and my creativity had been completely squashed in my job. I mean, I came into it with a huge amount of creativity, but then, I mean, I'm historic. I have 2 degrees in art history. I am not meant to do math. And my boss had put me as the accountant, which was ruinous for both myself and the business. But yeah, I mean, it was a mess. And so burlesque is what reignited me in a lot of ways.
So as someone who was so strongly spiritually pulled into burlesque, have there been any, I mean, it's been 10 years, so I'm sure there have been some, but have there been any really strong moments that you could maybe classify as your worst moment, or a moment when you really just doubted, either yourself or the fact that burlesque was right for you, or just that really kind of put it into question for you?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'd say I would have been performing, I guess it was like for like 3 years or so, and I was working for a great company and like burlesque production, and we were doing a bunch of stuff. And the thing is, I had gotten fired from my job, and so I decided I was just going to do burlesque full time, which was a very foolhardy plan. I mean, I'm glad I did it. It taught me a lot, but I was broke as a joke, and I had to work.
That's ballsy.
You know, and I was doing like as much as I could 7 days a week. Literally, I was working 7 days a week to make it happen, but burlesque was my priority. And I got this really cool gig down in Virginia and, you know, was flown down there and then opted not to fly back. I opted to take the bus back with a friend. And on that bus ride back, it was an overnight back to New York. My suitcase was stolen off the bus. And I lost 5 costumes.
Oh, no.
Something like 4 pairs of rhinestone pasties, 3 pairs of polys. I mean, all of my best clothes, like, I mean, because I had, like, dressed up to go down there. Because it was, like, my first big job, but I really wanted to show up. Everything got stolen. Tons of Amber Ray hair flowers. I mean, you name it. And I came back, and I could barely afford to buy myself groceries, much less brand new costumes. And it threw me into a really deep rut. And so I just did the same act over and over and over again, which to me was both stifling and really depressing. And I just kept slugging through because I had to make money. I had to honor my gig commitments, and I couldn't afford anything else. That for me was an extremely low, hard time for me. And it took me a while to come out of it. But, you know, here I am, you know, all these years later, and it was a very painful learning experience, but, you know, growth is not always comfortable. And it taught me a lot, both about my own commitments and perspective around work and income. And yeah, I mean, just driving myself to exhaustion, you know, like doing like out of town gigs, you know, like triple booking myself in 3 different states over the course of a weekend, and just like doing it. And then, you know, come Monday, just literally being flat, like it's somebody had let all the air out of my tires. And sure, it was like, you know, short term, it was amazing. And long term, it destroyed me. But again, I'm glad I did it because I now know I never want to do that again.
There you go. Yeah, I mean, it teaches you something. Was there anything particular that kind of helped you get through some of those tough times?
Honestly, I feel it was my sisters, my burlesque family. You know, I'd be real honest with them. And I have to say, like, after my suitcase got stolen, I remember posting on Facebook, and out of the woodwork, so many of my, like, members of my burlesque family came forward and gave me stuff. Like, Gal Friday gave me pasties and a gorgeous pair of earrings. Gigi La Femme gave me a pair of pasties. People showed up and just gave me, like, bras, underbits that I could create stuff from. And that to me was so moving. It was so moving because I had never been shown such generosity. Because a lot of the gals who were giving me stuff, like, they were also, like, on a total budget, you know, living paycheck to paycheck, because it's expensive to live in New York and, you know, gig. And it was such an amazing show of generosity, and it moved me to my core. And I knew that I was exactly where I needed to be, doing exactly what I needed to be doing with the people that I needed to be with. So it was amazing. But it was a very painful, and on a level shameful time for me. Just feeling that shame around, like, what the hell am I doing with my life? But then being like, hold up, I'm here for a reason. Let's keep going.
You mentioned that shame. Was there issues with your family too? I mean, how were they? Were they pretty supportive of everything? And your friends kind of from outside of burlesque?
My family was super supportive. My father, I mean, I like to say I'm half WASP, half immigrant, and my mom's side is the WASP side, my dad's side is the immigrant side. And so my father, in perfect, like, descended from immigrants fashion, was just really worried about money. And he'd always be like, how are you making money right now? Like, how are you able to feed yourself? How are you keeping your roof over your head? And that was like, it was just echoing the same voices in my head, which was always very uncomfortable. Cause I'd be like, well, I'm making it happen, but I was literally dollar to dollar, paycheck to paycheck. And it was like crossing a finish line every single month when all of my bills would go out. And I would make it. Some months I didn't, but some months, most of the months I did. And I would crash, and then it'd be like staring up another mountain and be like, oh my God, I have to make, however much money in the next 30 days so I can do this all over again. And it was hard. It was hard. I am not going to glamorize it or lie about it at all. I ended up just diversifying what I was doing and, teaching, creating more content that was from me, from my heart. I began to create a more sustainable pattern for myself. And I'm still learning. Absolutely, I'm still learning. But it's happening more fluidly and more frequently, which is wonderful affirmation for me. And which also tells me, like, I'm going to keep on keeping on because I'm clearly doing something right.
So to flip that kind of on its head, you went through kind of those low, more than a moment, a low period of time with all of that, but I'm sure there were highs in there. But have you had any particular, throughout these 10 years, any really best moments that just stick out to you as just being the epitome and you just felt on cloud 19 or 29 or whatever?
Oh, man.
I'm sure there's been a lot.
There have been a lot. I mean, like rewinding all the way to the beginning, who I started doing burlesque with in London, this amazing woman named Laura Clifton, who used to run what was called the Whoopee Club, which was a night, like an event company, basically. And they had shows at the Bethnal Green Working Men's Club, and they had stuff all over. And Laura just really liked me and booked me for a show on Valentine's Day in London, where I performed in front of, God, I don't even know how many people. And like, she got me costumes. I had backup dancers, and I had been doing burlesque for maybe 6 months. And that was an incredible affirmation. The other one was when I got to perform with Lucha Vavoom in LA. Again, it was a Valentine's Day show. Interesting. I didn't put that together until now. And over the course of 2 nights, I performed in front of 2,800 people. And they like freaked out for my act. And that was unbelievable. That to me was like, yes, I'm doing this. I love it. But I have to say, like, on a quieter level, has been teaching my classes. I developed a class for BurlyCon, which I now teach all over the world, called Healing Your Relationship with Your Body. Because I've had my own body stuff. I don't know a single woman in burlesque who does not have some level of body learning to do. And teaching it and witnessing the unfolding that happens for some of the participants is nothing. I mean, it's amazing. It is a profound honor to hold space for that. Because all I do is create the container. It's the people who are taking the class, if they're willing to go there, if they're willing to do the work, the unbelievable transformation that happens. And the emails that I've gotten from my students over the years has been just incredible. BurlyCon, anybody who's listening who has never been, go! It is an amazing, amazing, amazing experience. Yeah, like sleep a lot, eat well, and just take as many classes as you can. Like take notes, just do it, and block out like at least 1 or 2 days after you're home to just integrate and absorb because you will be tired. It's an amazing experience though. Simply amazing.
Speaking of, we're talking about a little bit about acts. I know you mentioned earlier, kind of during that time after your costumes were stolen and kind of doing the same, having to do the same acts over and over again. I'm curious to know like what you have going on, for example, now that you're much more established. Do you have like a certain repertoire of acts, I'm sure? How many and how often do you come up with new ones?
Oh man, that's a good question. As of right now, I actually have a bunch of costumes that are in dire need of repair. Like, as somehow this happens, like, it's like when you run out of all of your toiletries at the same time, like 4 or 5 of my acts just like broke. So like they didn't completely break, but like props need replacing, costumes need repairing, stuff like that. So right now I'm really only focusing on a very small handful of acts, also because my back is still healing. But in total, I want to say, actually, hold on, I will pull up, I have a playlist on my phone that has all of my acts on it. So if ever my music doesn't work, I just hand my phone off. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. I would say of those, there's probably like 4 or so of them that I don't do super often, 3 or 4 of them, but the rest I do.
Wow.
Some are seasonal, some of them are theme specific. But yeah, I mean, I feel like it always benefits to have a large repertoire because it also helps you be bookable for more shows. You know?
Absolutely.
And especially in places in like big cities for those who perform in large cities or anywhere, even smaller cities or towns where, you know, there are like corporate functions or like businesses that want to hire you. It's great to have a theme, like holiday themed acts, but also acts that are a little cleaner than they are raunchy. And I say that New York is a very raw scene, which I am very grateful for, especially for our foremothers. I'm thinking in particular like Julie Atlas Muse, Dirty Martini, World Famous Bob, Bambi the Mermaid, Bunny Love, Tigger, and like these people they are out of the performance art scene of the 90s in your face. So don't be surprised if you see something either going in or coming out of someone on and so like with that vibe in mind, corporate places don't like that stuff. So it's good to have like, really beautiful, really polished acts. Also like the whole Gatsby thing, like 20s acts are really popular. So it's sometimes good to have like stuff like that in your repertoire. But again, like I want to caution anybody against putting an act in repertoire-wise that just to like tick a box, because if your heart and soul isn't in it, it's not going to be a very interesting act for the audience to watch because you're not going to be interested in it. It's important to create work that you yourself are jazzed to do and that you love and are willing to explore with every performance you do. That I feel is a lot more exciting and engaging to watch.
Well, that's a really good point because, you know, especially for those of us who are trying to do this, you know, maybe as either as full-time or at least even a part-time career, you know, and working to make money and be booked and everything, it is kind of finding that balance between playing to the business side and, like you said, what is popular and what will actually book, you know, whether it's corporate or other performances, and then between, you know, that self-expression. So you're right. I think it's, you know, taking, you know, maybe like if someone wants a Halloween show, for example, or you know that would be bookable.
Right.
But you're not that into Halloween. Well, find a way. Find some
like,
angle.
My favorite thing when people are like, oh, it's Halloween, I don't know what to do. And like, take your favorite act, paint yourself either like a zombie or a corpse. Boom, done. That's
done. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. And like, I like watching, you know, I mean, even in music, for example, my favorite musical numbers are ones that combine two different genres. Right. You know, the acoustic versions of hip hop songs or whatever it is, you know, so finding that kind of unique approach on things. And I think that's something that can be lacking, or can be difficult. It's not anyone's fault, but especially among newer performers and some of the, you know, the classes that are out there don't always emphasize that enough. I think it's, you know, we watch on YouTube and we see these classic numbers and things like that. And we think we have to emulate that. Exactly.
Totally.
My opinion anyway. And so if and when you do come up with new numbers, do you have kind of a typical kind of method that you go through? Do you start with the music? Do you start with a character? How does that work?
Well, my favorite way to do it is to just organically have an act come to me. But in the years of performing, I've been booked very frequently for theme shows where there is either a stylistic theme or stuff is centered around the work of a single musical artist. For instance, like a few months back, I had to create an act to a Donna Summer song. Prior to that, oh God, I'm trying to think, you know, The Doors or something like that. Like artists that I would not ever think of creating an act for. But here I had been hired and it's like, all right, cool, let's do this. In that case, I would listen through, find a song that I liked, that like where there would be inklings of an act coming through as I was previewing the music, and then I would just go with it. And it also with like holiday acts, like listening to holiday songs, being like, okay, what do I want to dance to? Because there's a lot of holiday music I could give two shits about. But you know, finding, you know, like a great act, being like, okay, I'm going to be a mischievous elf, and I completely used another costume for another act, but I tacked on a Santa hat and elf ears and candy cane stockings, and that was it. Boom, done. Christmas act. Sold.
Yep.
I think one of the important things, especially around creating acts, and there's some acts that, you know, people will hold in their heart of hearts for years and years and years, and they have a very particular way that they want to realize it. And in others, they feel a bit more like sort of one-time throwaway that sometimes end up sticking around for longer than that. I want to encourage everybody to not be so precious with what they're putting out there. by all means, be discerning, be choosy about what you're wanting to put out there, but don't be a perfectionist, especially for the first few times you do it. It's not going to be perfect the first time you do it. It's not going to be perfect the second time you do it, third, fourth, fifth, sixth time. But when you keep doing it, when you keep plugging away at it, the act is going to find you, and you are going to find the act. World famous Bob always says, you have to do an act for a year until you find that act. And it's true. And I remember the first time I heard that, I was like, hell no, I'm perfect. This is great. It's like, oh, wait, I have plenty of room to learn here. I mean, it's an amazing unfolding. And the thing is, like, there's this performer, she's not on the scene anymore. She was called Veronica Sweet. And she was real funny about it. She'd be like, ladies, whatever you do out there, just remember, you're showing off your tits for money. So don't be precious about it. Those are words. But she was basically like, you're taking your top off for money. Don't worry if you fuck up. They're seeing your boobs. At the end of the day, most of them, that's all they care about, which is highly reductionist, but also like just sort of a wonderful moment of brevity.
Yeah.
Levity, I should say, rather. So it's, you know,
it's a bit liberating to realize.
Totally. It's like, you know what? Here's my art. It's completely temporal. Nobody's filming it, or at least I hope not. And I'm just going to fucking do it. And you know what? If this is something that matters to me, I am willing to explore what works and also to recognize what doesn't and learn from that.
Well, it's funny because that kind of brings me back to something that Brene Brown says too, which is that people, you know, we want to see vulnerability in someone else. You know, we hate when it happens to us, but like if I'm at a show and someone kind of makes a mistake and just kind of covers it and like doesn't really care, I love that. You know, yeah. It's the awkwardness of when they, you know, kind of make a mistake and then they freak out and then the whole thing unravels, you know, but it's like, I don't mind when someone either makes a mistake or something. First of all, most of the audience isn't even going to notice because they don't know your number, but like also it's just, you know, it makes it more real and it has that connection, that effective connection. You know, I've seen so many good ones where something happens wrong and then you just kind of look at the audience and just shrug and, you know, make a connection with somebody about it.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely. Because at the end of the day, we are just humans witnessing each other. I mean, you look at like babies' favorite thing to watch are other babies.
Yes.
And it's like one of the great things, like you go to any cafe in Europe and all of the street side cafes, all of the tables or all of the seats are pointing out. So you can watch the street go, like everybody in the street.
People watching, absolutely.
Is the best. I love doing it. And I think that there's a very human, not only need, but desire and sort of source of pleasure in watching the other as a way of experiencing ourselves. It goes back to the law of the sacred mirror. You know, it's like having that reflection back to ourselves. And when we see people, you know, say fuck up on stage, I mean, the first time I ever performed in front of Dirty Martini, which was a total fangirl moment, and fell on stage. It's the first and only time. Actually, no, it's not the only time. I've fallen, I think, 3 times total. But I slipped and fell on my ass. And I just got up, I shrugged, and went back to the act. And I actually got applause for that. And I was not wanting necessarily applause for that. But people were like, oh, cool, like, it's no big deal. Whatever I fell, I'm going to keep doing my act. I'm not going to, like, suddenly be like, oh, my God, I'm terrible. I failed. It's like, no. Come back to the moment. What can I do now? And the answer is just keep on going. And I think, you know, the audience, and I think it's a beautiful metaphor, you know, for anybody who then is, like, at a show who's, you know, who has just walked in off the street and walked in from whatever they're going through in their life at that time. And they're going to leave the show, you know, walking right back into their life. But with that moment of like, oh, well, I could also just like roll with the punches. And if I fuck up, I fuck up. But you know what? That's not the end. Life goes on. I'm just going to keep on keeping on. In that case, I would love to think that burlesque, you know, provides that sort of moment of mirroring back. Be like, hey, all of life is a creation. Just keep creating and don't limit yourself because you made a misstep or you fucked up. That's a profound learning experience. Just keep going. We're all on a learning curve. All of us. We wouldn't be in bodies if we weren't. So don't be precious about it. Just keep on going and be willing to learn. You know, it doesn't change who you are. The only pain that you're feeling is within your ego. And you are not your ego, just like you're not your feelings. You're much bigger than that. So don't sell yourself short. Just keep on keeping on. And you're going to find what's perfect for you in perfect timing.
I love that. I think that's, it's so true, performers, non-performers, because it can be, especially with things like social media, it can be such a vicious cycle. We feel the need to portray this perfect image because all we see are perfect images, and then it spirals downward. But we could also change that cycle and make it a more uplifting cycle instead, instead of vicious and portraying reality and keep on keeping on and doing our thing and showing the true nature of how life really is. Well, before we move on to kind of the final section, because I know we're getting long on time here, but that's wonderful. I love these conversations. I would like to know, just out of curiosity, what is one thing that you always have in your burlesque backstage kit?
So I have a little, it's not that little, plastic bag that goes with me wherever I go. I do not take stuff out of it. I will only put stuff into it. In the sense that, I don't, sort of situationally unpack it for certain shows. I take it with me everywhere I go. And in it, I call it my ditty bag, and it has 3 pairs of pasties, at least 1 roll of pasty tape, at least 1 thing of glitter, a tiny sewing kit, a tiny first aid kit. What else is I should have actually brought it with me. I have a little tin, an Altoids tin of bobby pins and hair elastics. Oh, essential oil. I'm a big user of essential oils. Also because I use natural deodorants all the time, and they will frequently fail.
Gotcha.
I like to freshen up when I'm backstage, and so I usually have either a lavender oil or a geranium oil in my bag because they're both antiseptic and they are really good at cutting through BO, and also just smelling good on the costumes. I also have little perfume balms. I'm trying to think what else. A little toothbrush that I don't use I just keep it just dry to if I need to do a quick just water brush if I ate something beforehand. A pair of scissors. It's just everything that I could need or anybody else backstage might need in a moment of crisis.
Nice little emergency kit, just in case.
But it's a big emergency kit. But
big, yeah. Well, cool. I know there's a lot more. I kind of, we could have talked about. I love, kind of what you do within burlesque, and I know outside of burlesque as well, with kind of your self-transformation work and all of that. But we'll have to save that kind of for another time because I do want to get on to our first. We have Pick Your Poison, which I have 9 different, just fun, silly questions so we can get to know you a little bit better. But I just need you to pick one of them. Just so any number 1 through 9.
3.
Number 3. What did you care about most when you were 10 years old?
Oh, man. What did I care about? That's a great question. At that point, we had just moved into Manhattan, and so I was a very tiny fish in an enormous pond. I think it was finding my way in a big city and finding my niche. And exploring and dancing, that sort of thing.
For me, it was probably a lot of boys and boy bands and stuff. But I think
school, so
gotcha. But I think it is. I mean, it is true. If we're honest with ourselves, I can think of the small little obsessions that I had back then. But I think if I'm honest with myself, you're probably on the right track there. I think that's what a lot of us cared about and still care about. That's kind of the underlying desire, I think, for most of us in life, is to kind of find, figure out whatever situation we're in, if we're in a big city, if we're in a small city, if we've just moved, whatever, and then finding our place inside of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even as children.
Yeah, so. Yeah.
So before we start to wrap it up, I always have a little section called This or That. So I have 2 choices, kind of a quick fire round. Okay. And you can choose which one most appeals to you. And I always say, interpret these in any way you like.
Awesome.
There's no general. Okay, are you ready to go?
I am.
All right, let's do it. Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts?
Whoa, Dunkin' Donuts.
Yes, so much better. City or country?
Can I say both? Because I love them both. If I had to choose a city next to a country and a country next to the city.
All right. Love or money?
Love.
Dita Von Teese or Dirty Martini?
Oh, I'm going to go with dirty.
Now, how about a dirty martini or a pint of beer?
Oh, a dirty martini.
Day or night?
Today I'm feeling day.
Harry Potter or Star Wars?
Star Wars.
Yes, that's my girl. Top or bottom?
Top.
Mountains or ocean?
Oh, Jesus.
I know.
Mountains.
Classic or neo-burlesque?
Oh, motherfucker. I'm going to go with neo.
As a little time out to that, I will say, after watching some of your videos, which I'll put in the show notes for this episode as well, I will say I love the way that you kind of do a nice blend. You have this classic style, but you have this really neo-comedy aspect in there. And I love that.
Thank you.
Peanut butter or jelly?
Peanut butter.
Comedy or tragedy?
Comedy.
Marvel or DC?
Oh, God. I'm going to go with Marvel.
Sleep or sex?
Sleep. Sorry. But my God, do I love sleep.
Heels or bare feet?
Bare feet.
And lastly, I was asked, because I'm from Paris, and that's where I started my journey, Paris or New York?
Paris!
Paris! Ah, do you perform there often?
I lived there for a while. I'm actually a born and bred New Yorker, but I have actually never performed in Paris. I want to very badly, but I lived there for basically a year and a half. I went to school there and then lived there after I graduated from college. So I have some dear friends there, and it has a very deep place in my heart.
That's great. Well, next time you go, I have my troupe there is Burlesque Malone, and they just started doing, I'm back here now, unfortunately, but they just started doing a monthly brunch show called Croissants and Corsets.
Oh my God.
So, and we have a special guest every month, so when you go, you have a place to perform.
Oui, s'il te plaît, j'adorerais.
Ah, bah, c'est très bien. La voilà. C'est parfait, en fait. And hopefully I will be there at some point in the near future to perform again as well. So it's perfect. All right, so before we wrap up, I like to ask this of everybody, especially of my American performers, because I know that the internet is a huge place, and I've seen some good, places with the British community of connecting. But how do you typically stay current on the burlesque news, the burlesque community, all of that kind of thing? Are there certain sites you go to or anything?
Yeah, I mean, Facebook is both a blessing and a curse.
Indeed.
I do treat it like the newspaper, albeit a very opinion-based, ranty, sometimes scary newspaper, but it is a great place to check in on all things like shows, events, upcoming stuff, but also like issues that are coming up in the burlesque world, like stalker alerts, like audience member shout outs, whatever. I mean, it runs the gamut. I'm grateful for Facebook, and I absolutely despise it. So
I think a lot of us feel that way. Yeah. Are there any particular groups that you know of or anything? I know, we have, there's burlesque. One that comes up often is Burlesque Big Sister, Big Brother. That's a great community.
I don't know that one.
It's wonderful. It's just more, kind of UK and Irish and, more that community, but it's fabulous. It's run by Diva Hollywood. Who's going to be on the show.
That's awesome.
Yeah, she's coming on in a couple weeks, and she's fabulous, and she runs a great community there. It's super active, so I highly recommend that to anybody. And I've been looking for one, so whether I just get more Americans we get more Americans to come in that, or it'd be nice to have one that was more, focused on the scene here, because it's hard to find a lot of kind of interconnected, unless you have those direct networking connections. Yeah. If you don't have that, it's hard to kind of see what's going on. So we're in the process of creating our industry, aren't we?
Yeah,
so
totally. We'll keep going. As a New Yorker, there's a New York burlesque group that has, at this point, thousands of members. And it's a fantastic resource for all things burlesque. There's a promo group, and there's a whole bunch of stuff. I also just rely on word of mouth, checking in with my friends, checking in backstage, just being like, hey, what's up? What are you doing? What's going on?
Well, how about videos? Do you have any YouTube videos that we need to check out? I'd love to hear about, kind of one of yours, which we'll add. Again, everything that we talk about in this episode, as usual, is over on the show notes page for this episode, which is burlesquestrippeddown.com/legs. Legs. Legs.
I like it.
Boom. And so I'd love to, I'm going to embed some videos in there. I'd love to see one of yours. And then if you have, I don't know if you want to either talk about it or you can just email it to me, one that you just can't get enough of right now, whether it's burlesque or something else.
I am terrible at watching performances on YouTube, I have to say, primarily because there is a level of magic that gets robbed, from that. The two videos that I will mention, I know you only asked for one, but I'm going to
it's fine.
Pull her outside of the lines. One is actually my own that I recently rediscovered, which was taken at a Valentine's Day show for Wasabasco this last year. Or maybe no, it was last year. I'm sorry. Was it last year? Yeah, I think it was last year. And I do an act involving donuts. That is one of my favorite acts that I've ever done. And at the end of the act, I throw 2 donuts into the audience. And for the first time ever, I had a donut thrown back at me in a rather aggressive fashion.
Oh my goodness.
And it was a very strange, and it's all captured on video. And it makes me chuckle when I look at it, because I see my face and I'm like, dude, did you seriously just fucking do that?
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
Kept on going. So that makes me laugh. The other one, if people haven't watched it, Michelle Lemoore's Beethoven. That is fantastic. And that is one, I have not seen it in person, but I have seen it on video, and it's one of those acts that actually translates extremely well to video. Oh, I remember one more thing. There used to be a show that ran at Coney Island every summer here in New York called This or That. It was run by the great Fredini, and it ran for many years, but from the years, I want to say 2004 to 2006 or 2007, it was filmed. And so they did create a video podcast for it. I don't know if it's still up, but if you do a search for This or That, you can see some of the legends of the New York City burlesque scene performing on stage at Coney Island.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, and like Lady Ace, who doesn't perform anymore, who's been in LA for years, Miss Tickle, Dirty Martini, World Famous Bob, Bambi and Bunny. Like, I mean, it's like burlesque royalty from like 10 years ago. It's a real amazing time capsule. So definitely, I recommend that too.
Fantastic. Well, I will get all three of those, maybe just one of the This or That videos. I'll get those up in that show notes section, along with some kind of information. Now, of course, we didn't really get to talk about it, but you and I have a special bond that I'm saying because we are both podcasters. Mm-hmm. As I mentioned kind of in the intro before we started the interview, you do have an amazing podcast called Lunch with Legs. That's really fun to listen to. I love that you kind of bring in all sorts of different artists and comedians and things like that. You just recently had that Jim Crow episode about the Jim Crow Project. Is that what it is?
Yeah, it's called Die Jim Crow. It's a
Die Jim Crow. Right?
Yeah, a project that is being created. It's basically creating an album that is written and performed by formerly and currently incarcerated Black people, and it examines the inherent racism in the prison industrial complex. And I speak with one of the guys behind the project, Doc Israel. It's a short episode. It's one of my shorter episodes, but I was just blown away by it.
It's a great episode. So she does some great interviews. So I highly recommend anybody who's listening, if you like podcasts, which clearly you do because you're listening to this one, go ahead over to, can we get it at lunchwithlegs.com?
Yep, you can stream it on my website, lunchwithlegs.com. You can also just go on iTunes because it's on there. You can either subscribe or just listen episode by episode.
Fantastic. So definitely do that. Is there any other ways that, because I'm sure now that everybody has listened and heard your beautiful voice and all the amazing things that you have to say, how can we kind of keep up with you, get in touch with you, find out more about what you got going on?
You can visit my website, legsmalone.com, which is the center for all things legs.
Love it.
I have all of my social media profiles linked onto there. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Tumblr. I've got the podcast. I'm teaching a whole bunch. Definitely check out my calendar on my website because I don't know how much I'm traveling over the next few months. I did just come back from Arizona, and I taught with Miss Lucy Morals, which was amazing at her studio. And I want to travel, I want to perform, and I want to teach above all. Check out my calendar. If I have some open spaces and you have an open space, holla.
Perfect. And if anyone else is in Central Florida, I have already made the request that you email me because I want to connect with more people in this area or in Florida in general. And I'm thinking about, since I'm going to be here for a little while, I'm thinking about starting to bring down some teachers. So we will definitely look into getting you down maybe for some, showgirl Zen kind of stuff and all of that good stuff. Totally. Super excited.
And thank you for creating some burlesque love down in Florida.
I'm working on it. I think, there's certain things going around. I hear rumors about it, but I haven't seen too much happening. So I'm sure there is. I'm not meaning to put down the scene or anything like that. I'm sure there are things happening, but it's just a matter of finding them.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, perfect. Well, is there anything else that Legs, you are wonderful. Did you want to share anything else with our audience today?
Just keep on keeping on, everybody. Follow your heart. And to quote Rocky Hard, don't dream it, be it.
Don't dream it. Okay, I'm not going to sing anymore. Perfect. Don't dream it, be it, everybody. Thank you so much, Legs.
Thank you, Velvet. What a pleasure. Thank you so much.
And there you have it. Thank you again so much, Legs, for being on with me today. It was really, really a pleasure to get to talk to you. And I hope that everyone listening really appreciated it as well. As we mentioned in the episode, if there are some links, you want to check out some of the videos that she mentioned, other links, you want to get in touch with her, you can do all of that at the home base for this episode, which is over at burlesquestrippeddown.com/legs, Legs, legs. So if you want to get in touch with Legs, definitely do that. Check out where she's performing. If you're ever passing through New York City, definitely check that out because she has just got a lot of amazing things to share and the stage personality that is just captivating, really. So thank you again, Legs. It was really a pleasure. Next week, I will be having an interview, and I've been teasing it for a little while because I do have Miss Diva Hollywood herself is coming on the show next week. She is the founder of the infamous burlesque Big Sister, Big Brother group that we've been talking about for weeks and weeks and weeks here on the podcast. So we have a really great conversation, and I'll be sharing that with you as well. In the meantime, please don't hesitate to share these episodes with your friends. I'm trying to get into as many ears as possible. Send me some love if you have some time. I always love to hear to have some emails sent into me, voicemails, things like that, any Facebook messages. Just give me the love. I want to hear who's listening, where you're coming in from, all of that kind of stuff. So definitely share the love with your friends, share some love back with me, and if you're over on iTunes, please head over to the Burlesque Stripped Down page and hit subscribe, and then leave me a rating and review so that I can see how people are liking it and we can get in front of as many ears as possible. Thank you again so much for listening, and I will catch you next time. Just make sure, in the meantime, that you stay sexy.